Okay, so it's finally apron day, and I'm ready to walk you through the tutorial. So I have all my pieces here, so I'm just going to go through the pieces first, and then we'll construct the front panel first, and then attach it to the back panel, and then attach the ties. And it's a really simple process, but you know me, I like things a little bit perfect. So I'm going to show you some ways to make your project really nice. So the first thing I have over here is a ruffle piece. You're going to need 4 of these, and the measurements are in the document that I put on Facebook. But I like to do as much prep work in advance or at the same time if I have multiples of things that I can do. So you can see here that I've got it finished. And I'm going to show you how the ruffle foot works on my machine in a second. So you'll need 4 different ruffles, and those are 6 inches wide each. And then you've got your piece for your ties. This piece is 8 inches wide, and I like to cut 2 pieces from the fabric so that I have a nice long tie. This tie here I've prepped, and we're going to go over this later, but you can see it's been pressed so that each edge is pressed in, and then I've got a little detail here on the back, and then folded over and pressed again. So that'll make a really nice tie. This one's a little bit short because I was experimenting and I was short on fabric. So the first thing we're going to do, aside from getting your ruffles ready, is mark your front panel piece. And this one I've marked in pen just so you can see it, but I'll show you the piece that I'm actually going to be using today, and that one is marked with just press marks. I like to do that better because no matter what chalk you use or whatever, it doesn't always wash out of your fabric. So I like to use Tailor tacks and ironing as much as I possibly can. So this is what your marks should look like. It should be 1/4 inch from each side, and then your first mark is going to be about 3 1/4 from the top. These next 2 will be 4 inches below that and below the next one, and then this one is 1 inch from the bottom. So here's my panel piece that I'm going to use today, and hopefully you can see my press marks here. And for this I've already attached it. I'm trying to save some time on sewing so you guys can actually see the construction. But this is the front panel and this is the back panel. And you can see after I marked my front panel, I just stitched these right sides together along the bottom. And I found in my experiments that this was the best way to do it to avoid getting that bottom ruffle caught in this seam. And then of course last night I woke up in the middle of the night and thought, well, why am I doing that? I can just use one bigger piece of fabric and fold it. So you could do it either way, and I'll probably do it that way next time. But for today we're going to use it this way. So I'm going to show you now how the ruffle foot works on my machine, because it's really fun and it makes things really fast. There's a tutorial that I posted on Facebook, hopefully you all saw it, about how to make ruffles in the more typical way. You don't need a ruffle foot to make ruffles, but I found this to be much faster and kind of fun. So this is what the ruffle foot looks like. And it looks like a really complicated piece of equipment. The foot part where it attaches on my machine is right here. There's a couple different types of machines, and your foot may look a little bit different for your machine. But for my machine, it just attaches right here at the bottom. And there's an arm that you have to make sure is in the proper position to make the ruffles happen. And then you just feed the fabric through it. I don't know if you can zoom in here, but you can see this little spot right here. The fabric actually has to be pushed through that. And then you just stitch. And it's kind of noisy and kind of clunky, but it goes really fast. done. It's tying off there. Okay, so here you have a finished ruffle. Piece of cake. So for this first part, I want to show you how to pin your ruffles onto the front of your panel so that they're nice and straight, because if you look at the ruffle, when it pleats it all together, and if you're doing it by hand, you'll have the same result. It's kind of curved. And if you don't have a reference point on your panel, your ruffle is going to end up curved because you just won't have a way to visualize what's straight and what's not. And so that's why you've marked your panel and put your press lines in. So the first thing we're going to do is pin the ruffles on. I should have done this in advance. I already know the order that my ruffles are going to go in, but I like to lay them out just so I can see it visually before I pin them on. So you're going to start, I don't know if you can see this. You can see here is the 1/4 inch line, and I'm going to start pinning from the very bottom. And so my first edge, the left edge, is going to go right up against that 1/4 inch line. This 1/4 inch line is going to be your stitch line. And so you need a reference point to make sure that you don't catch your ruffles there. And you're just going to pin it all the way across. Right onto the line. So that when you're done, your ruffle is going to be nice and straight. You can kind of see where I'm needing to match up against the line so that I don't end up with a curve in my ruffle. Okay, so here you can see I've got my ruffle pinned on, and you can see it really does want to curve. So that reference point is going to be really important. The only drawback to using a ruffler foot on your machine is that you don't have the ability to adjust the ruffle unless, of course, you leave your threads loose. I suppose that might work, but it really pleats the fabric first and locks it into place. So it's more difficult to adjust as you go. So there is a benefit to doing the ruffle by hand. So the point of that being, you can see there's a big space here on the end. Really, you want your ruffle to go all the way to the 1/4 inch mark on the end of your fabric. So you can either adjust it so that your fabric is more in the middle, or you can trim your line at the end. So you would continue on, pin all your ruffles on your reference marks here. And I'm going to show you the next step on a finished, or an almost finished apron. So here I have a piece that my ruffles have been pinned and stitched. So you can see, this is what they look like. Stitched all the way across. Each ruffle is on. And the next step is to stitch up your sides. This one's already been stitched, so I can show you some things. So after you sew your ruffles on, you're going to take your panel pieces and you're going to pin each ruffle away from the edges. Okay? You don't want any of your ruffles in the vicinity of this stitch line here. And then you're just going to take your front panel and your back panel, which you've stitched together at the bottom, and you're going to pin the sides so that everything stays nicely in place. And then you're just going to stitch up either side so that what you have ends up looking like this. This is the back side of the front panel, and this is the back side of the back panel. Okay? What I want to show you about this is, I'll show you on the other side, these intersections here. Because you want your stitch line going up the side to be as close as you can possibly get to where you've stitched your ruffles on. Your ruffles are going to flow out a little bit, so it's okay if they're not, perfectly touching. But you want a nice clean edge, and really all you want to see from the front of your apron is the ruffles, not the edges of the front panel. So that's the first step of the apron. And you can see here, this is where the stitch line is. This is the opposite side from what I just showed you. So you really want to get as close to this edge right here so that you have a nice looking finished product. What are we at for time? Does it show on there? Okay, let's pause now and I'll put a second one on.